It could be any number, but by using the planet and placing one in one location opposite the other in correct proportion, you could then, in other words, planet Earth would be 2, 3. Everything between one ring and the other,
That one
in
and
this
that one.
case, it would be planet Earth that is being propelled somewhere. Now, if 2012, which I contend was a very important year for many things, uh, but primarily the end of the Mayan calendar, which many people construed was a failure, I said no. I immediately recognized that something had happened that wasn't understood by anyone, not in, not including myself. I didn't understand it, but I suspected that we had been put through some type of manipulation. And then, of course, I didn't understand, nor do I still contend that I do, but I have ideas with regard to time travel that they themselves have more or less told us about, promoted as theory. And yet, when I look at this upper image of the CERN collider, large ring, little ring, and you look at this image of the spacecraft, this light speed craft, you see that the engine is located behind two CERN circles, a smaller one and a larger one. Now, the smaller one is what takes the particles from the larger one and processes it with energy, frequency, and vibration. So this engine uses a CERN type of process that not only acquires the particles from wherever they are, which is why they don't need any fuel. They don't need to store any fuel. And once it becomes operational, it creates a shield, because you see, once this portal opens, they're moving the portal through like what I would have to term space, and yet they're moving perhaps into another dimension at almost light speed. Now, where do they want to go? Well, I don't know, but let's just refresh our memories. The pyramids of Giza, okay, are aligned in such a way to Orion, okay, Orion's belt. The pyramids in Mexico, okay, are aligned to Orion. The Temple of Kukulkan, okay, is aligned to Orion. Now, since the pyramids of Giza are different from the pyramids of Mexico, the Temple of Kukulkan, primarily, there is a reason for this top portion of the pyramid being different. I now understand why it has to be that way. That's why my 4 plus 4 equals 8 is, well, it's becoming a very interesting subject for me to have to report on. And when I do, I want to show all of those areas that relates. And this spacecraft, light speed engine craft, please note for yourself, large ring up front opens the portal. The pusher is the engine itself, but the engine is fueled from what ring number 3 produces and provides to ring number 2, where it's hit with sound, energy, frequency, and vibration. And there are many areas when I researched this, when I realized that they were using, because I did myself ask initially, I said, oh, I wonder, okay, it's a light speed engine, but this isn't anti-gravity. And if it's not anti-gravity, well, what are they using for fuel? Well, when I learned it was a CERN type process that collects and creates the particles necessary to then be processed through ring number 2, that creates the light speed engine that operates, that provides the means by which the light speed engine can then work. And I saw it all together. I then had to also see how this image of the spacecraft and the image of CERN itself located in Geneva could then be, because I believe it already has. I just believe it already has. We have CERN located where it's located, and I believe that any other CERN, smaller type collider. Could be Australia, could be Antarctica, could be anywhere. But by placing one on one side of the Earth and the other on the other side of the Earth, you create a type of movement. One opens a portal, so if CERN is in fact opening gateways and portals, we're being pushed through what we perceive to be time by the effect of the smaller collider processing the particles from the larger collider. Larger to smaller creates the effect, and if planet Earth is located between 2 and 3, think on that. That's why I believe what Musk and NASA are revealing is much more than anyone will ever process, because you have to think into it. You have to research enough to understand, because if you didn't ask what fuels this light speed engine, well, then you weren't really taking the time to focus on what you would need to focus on. Because if you ask the right questions based on what they show you, you can then conclude that perhaps, because it is speculative, but it is one of those strong perhaps, this is how the secret Space Force has been able to do things with regard to time teams, doing things. And so when I get into Kukulkan, I'm going to discuss all of those aspects again because of Kukulkan. But it's important that you understand by the time we get there how they would be able to do it. They would open a portal through some way, means, or process. They would then process the particles created that would do something in terms of creation of an energy, light speed, that, because I just learned here recently, a black hole can turn into a white hole. And when it turns into a white hole, it turns into a beam of light. So what we're seeing here is beyond my ability to explain with regard to physics. So I encourage those of you with more science background, physics background, more interest in quantum physics, quantum mechanics, to get into this, because this image that is being shown to everyone reveals so much. All you have to do is think on it. Realize that this front ring, much larger, is a design premised off of CERN on Earth in Geneva. Large ring, little ring. The little ring is what processes those special particles that are created or extracted from the large collider. Large to small, processes it. You separate these two rings, put one on Earth in one location, the smaller at the other, and you're going to be able to then propel Earth through time-space wherever we're headed. Now, how we're headed there, I don't believe that there's some pilot. Okay, no, it all have to be artificial intelligence that is helping not only design, build, but I'm certain it's going to do many of the things needed for this entire spacecraft to function. And once it begins functioning the way that I envision they would need it to function, they're going to be able to do things. This is why my other thoughts on this is that on Earth, as I've stated before, the deep state, what I call the globalists, there are in fact groups, and within the billionaire class, deep state billionaire class, these elitist globalists, Elon Musk is one of them. Yes, he does many things for many of these globalists, which we're seeing in many of the things that he's creating and or promoting or advancing in terms of technology. You know, the nano diamond battery, 28,000 year shelf life, that is also a factor that comes into play in a type of craft like this. But, okay, I wanted to show this. I want you to leave you with, if you had a large circular collider like in Geneva, you have a smaller one located somewhere else, like maybe west of Australia or maybe south of Australia in Antarctica, then you could, the Earth, planet Earth, what constitutes planet Earth, would be between 2 and 3. And as long as it's between 2 and 3, the effect of one, this type of energy, could move the entire planet. Planet Earth would be a spacecraft that could be moved through this portal opening, but the portal opening is always opening and we're always moving through it. Now, where we're going, I don't know, but I've given some thoughts, because you see, if they're going to travel to other star systems, they want to get back to Orion. How'd they get from Orion to here to begin with? I don't believe they came to Earth in spacecraft like we envision going somewhere else, like the moon or the Mars, in spacecraft with rockets and no. Mm-mm. They're moving through space and time, which is, I hate to even use the word space and time, because in this other dimension, those things that we construe as space and time may not be as they are here. That's why the laws of physics may not exist in the same way in this other place. And if they already know this and they're already maximizing that capability, and what it says is that we have two groups, two advanced technological groups
listen to
among the
this.
deep state. One that wants to enslave the planet, acquire all of its resources, and have total control over everything and everyone, to include life and death decision-making process over who lives, who dies, and what, if you're going to live, what you're going to do. Now, this other group says, the hell with you. No, we can't live with you. We're going to take our technology and we're going to go somewhere else and start anew without you. Because since they cannot coexist, they have to separate themselves. So we have one group that wants to go to the stars, basically, which is Elon Musk, Proxima b, an Earth-like type planet that has been mentioned. And so these things all related to Elon Musk are very important. But for the mega ritual, it brought me back to 2012, CERN, the ability to move the entire planet through a portal that's being created and being pushed by the effects of what is being created particle-wise, that's being processed in the smaller ring, that creates some type of an effect, a push effect that moves us. Now, I've thought about that. Okay, if we move through space, how could all the stars and planets and things still be where they need to be? Well, all of that could be a construct of a hologram that is created within what we perceive to be Earth. So whether it's round or whether it's flat, as I've stated before, it's probably both, depending on, whether you're seeing it as part of the matrix or seeing it as part of the secret science. That's why it would be one or the other, but it really isn't either. It just depends on where you're standing when you're observing. If you're on the secret science side, then you would see it for what it is, a matrix type of holographic, holodome creation, where we think we see things the way we see them, but they're not really that way at all. So, once again, look at this light speed craft. Please observe ring number 3, ring number 2, and that ring number 2 is smaller than ring number 3, and that the inhabitants would all be located between 2 and 3. Forward of the engine, behind the portal opening. And yet the entire thing moves. See, when we talk about an portal opening gateway at CERN, it would be stationary, you'd think, where you would then have to walk through it in order to be somewhere else, or where something else can walk through to come into our reality, our dimension. That no longer applies in this spacecraft, because everything, everyone, and everything is moving along behind the opening and in front of the light speed engine. And if they've taken this spacecraft capability, and in other words, let's say they were using it effectively on Earth to do what they were doing, and through trial and error, because they had to experiment and learn the things they needed to learn. Now that they have this design for this spacecraft, look at it. Okay, like I said, I didn't design it, but I observed the large ring the small ring, understand that the inhabitants are between 2 and 3, and that 3 produces what 2 needs to produce to feed the engine. And since 2 and 3, one is smaller than the other, it matches the CERN Earth collider location in terms of the model of a large ring, smaller ring. If you don't see that and can't process that and give yourself some time to think about what that might mean, because I still very strongly believe it's only a theory, but I've been thinking it since 2012, that Earth, the entire planet, which means everyone on it and everything on it, if they're moving us all at one, in other words, nothing would change for us. Everything would be out there in space. And if space is something that can be holographically produced and or created in order to satisfy all of those who might think, well, the stars are still all in the same shape, the constellations, so, we haven't gone anywhere. No, that would be an effect created by the illusionary aspect of the holographic capabilities. And so, while this spacecraft, isn't, of course, planet Earth, I'm applying what I know and what I've heard rumor-wise about CERN. And once I saw this spacecraft and looked at it, looked at the numbers, I said, oh my, all of the inhabitants on this spacecraft are located between 2 and 3, forward of the smaller ring and behind the larger ring. So if you put Earth, in the middle with collider opening a portal in the larger one someplace, the smaller one propelling us through space, then theoretically, I'm saying that this entire planet Earth could be moved like a spacecraft to wherever they want to move it to. But that's not the plan. They took that knowledge of perhaps what has already been known to be capable and developed and created a spacecraft based on that design, which CERN in Geneva and the model for a large ring, little ring denotes. It strongly suggests it. So the engine located behind 2 CERN circles, to me, matches what's on Earth. That's when I got to thinking, well, if the CERN location in Geneva is the large, and they were to then separate the smaller by sending these particles where they need to, using these Earth grid ley lines, to the smaller ring, then they could, in essence, move planet Earth through a portal that we would not be we wouldn't perceive we were moving through a portal, because, once again, what's in front of the ring 3 is this dimensional portal, but we're moving through it. It's opened, it opens, and then we start moving through it. But for us, everything remains normal. You see, everything, the inhabitants, the passengers on this light speed craft, located between 2 and 3, even though they're moving through the portal opening, they, in essence, are between 2 and 3. But for them, the effect is, I'm certain, none. Not in the way that, in other words, it would be like being here on Earth. We could be very well moving through a portal opening that CERN has opened, but we don't perceive it, we don't see it, we don't feel it. Why? Because we're between 2 and 3. Being between 2 and 3 means that we don't see anything except what we're meant to see because we're here. Now, what happens on the other side of 3 is something I cannot discuss, but I wanted to show this because it's important that you understand that I've given some time to this Elon Musk light-speed engine. Of course, when I asked what fuels it, when I learned that it's a CERN-type process that creates or mines particles, like CERN does, like the God particle. And if the God particle is in fact the particle that can allow you to do many things, I could understand it to be why it's called the God particle. Because with it you could do anything, okay? And Perhaps they know. Now, where we're going, I don't know. Where they're going, I don't know. But I do strongly believe we have two groups. One that wants to go somewhere else, separate, away from Earth, because they cannot coexist with those on Earth who want to remain on Earth and use their knowledge of the secret science in order to enslave the planet and begin eliminating, as they already have, the population, so that they can have a planetary population that they can control and that they can specifically determine through needs who's going to live, who's going to die, and if you're going to live, what you're going to do in this new world order. So I needed to show this CERN type of process and discuss it, because this spacecraft, its design, says so much to those willing to think beyond what you're seeing. Large ring, little ring, light produced as a result, and the inhabitants between 2, 3. And once I grasped that, I said to myself, I've always heard stories that, CERN is opening a portal gateway. Well, maybe they are, and maybe we're pushing Earth through it. But nothing's changing for us in terms of the stars and everything, because everything is part of this holographic matrix that's been created. So I believe Elon Musk knows a lot more than they're revealing. But they have to reveal in order to do, because you see, this is going to be operational by 2024. This is very significant, because when you get into 2030 and what many people suspect is going to occur, this, for me, is a strong indication that we have one group of advanced elitists who want to do something very different from the other group of advanced elitists, all of which have advanced technology that we don't know anything about, and which they plan to use for themselves, for the elites, so that they can benefit from it. While the rest of us, well, who knows, because with prospects of World War, nuclear strikes, and all the things that are going on, China, southern border, North Korea. Yes, if you watch, most people don't know this, but I'm going to just share something. Red Dawn, it was a movie, came out in 1984. Now, they did a Red Dawn invasion movie, which was a remake of the original, 2012. Now, think about that. 1984, Red Dawn 1. And in it, of course, it was Oregon, Washington State, it was Chinese, and later Russian and Cuban. Okay, all the elements that I now contend. And so the Northwest, I'm certain, will be addressed through North Korea and possibly China. The further down you come from, California, because of all the ports, China, all the way down to, of course, Ensenada, where there has been here lately observed things involving China. China operates the port of Ensenada, and things that have been offloaded have been taken to locations here in the past few months, to locations that are secret, but yet drivers are, when they drop the trailers or whatever, they're delivering to either Chinese combat types, Russian combat types, or Cuban combat types. And as I've intended, most of that cargo that has been delivered, I'm certain, has already been pre-positioned across into America, which is why then the immigrants can pretend to be immigrants and can come over, match up with the weapons, and then begin the operations that they're going to be conducting as part of a coordinated invasion into America. Now, Florida will be, I'm certain, dealt with by Cuba. And Cuba could very well deal with Houston and New Orleans along the Gulf Port. Cuba could very well, along with Russia, and maybe Cuba and North Korean subs, things of this nature. But things are happening. And for those of you, I stated long ago, I didn't think there was going to be an election. Now that Ukraine and all of this is coming out, and food shortages, and they're totally destroying everything necessary to create the means by which to kill more people and bring under greater control those that are are still around to survive. So when you look at this light speed engine and the craft, you have to bring in an understanding of CERN technology that is in play in this craft. If it's involved in this craft and the way it's been designed, you then, once you look at this top image, you can then see, and if you're not thinking, well, if they can do that to the spacecraft, open a portal and push, because it's attached, everything between 2 and 3 gets moved along into this portal opening, and it will always be moving at some type of 99.7% light speed, and it has to be less than 100 in order to push it. They're pushing the portal opening. In other words, they're opening a portal because they're attached to this portal opening. Once they propel it using the light speed engine, they move the entire thing. That's what made me realize maybe they've done this to planet Earth, because I have been thinking it 2012 because of the many things involving secret science. Now, when I get into Temple of Kukulkan, we're going to revisit some of these same things I just mentioned here, but in a different way. And it's going to prove something very, very profound. And so, that being said, this is what I wanted to show. Thank you for your time. And, well, going to, now that I'm set up, and this is more of a test